The arrogant Elysian Empire mocked Earth and humans, seeing them as primitive savages, unaware of humanity's secret weapon, an advanced stealth fleet awaiting the orders that would unleash humankind's fury across the stars. Admiral Nolan Thompson stood on the bridge of the UESC Nemesis, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic tactical display. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, thousands of stars glittering in the infinite void. An alert blinked on his display. He tapped it. "Admiral Thompson, urgent message from UESC High Command," his AI assistant reported. "Elysian forces have launched a full-scale invasion of human space. They've already glassed 3 outer colonies. Fleet trajectories indicate Earth is their next target." Thompson's jaw clenched. He zoomed the holodisplay out, showing Earth's solar system and the blinking red icons of the massive approaching Elysian fleet. If the Xenos reached Earth, it would mean the end of humanity, the end of everything. Billions would die. The Elysian Emperor Varys saw humans as vermin to be exterminated. But Varys didn't know about humanity's trump card, didn't know about the UESC stealth fleet hiding in dark space, with enough firepower to obliterate an armada. Thompson had to time the counterstrike perfectly, decloak the human ships at the exact right moment to maximize the element of surprise. Get it wrong and the Elysians would swat them aside, leaving Earth defenseless. The survival of the human race hung in the balance. The stealth fleet was humanity's last hope, and the order to engage the enemy rested on Thompson's shoulders. He took a deep breath, then opened a secure channel to Fleet Command. "This is Admiral Thompson. We are out of time. The Elysians approach the solar system, requesting authorization to decloak the stealth fleet and engage the enemy." As Thompson waited for the response from Fleet Command, his mind drifted to the long history of Elysian arrogance and disrespect towards humanity. For as long as he could remember, the Xenos had looked down on humans, treating them like ignorant children at best, and dangerous animals at worst. He thought back to his early days in the UESC, when human diplomats had first made contact with the Elysian Empire. Despite humanity's rapid technological progress and the formation of a united Earth government, the Elysians had scoffed at the idea of treating humans as equals. Emperor Varys himself had laughed in the face of the human ambassador, calling humans a primitive species still wallowing in their own filth. As the years went by and humanity continued to advance, building mighty warships and expanding into the stars, the Elysians' dismissive attitude never wavered. They mocked human culture, sneered at human values, and belittled human achievements at every turn. Thompson had lost count of the number of times he'd heard Elysian officers refer to humans as savages or barbarians. But Thompson had never bought into the Elysians' arrogant worldview. He had seen the potential in humanity, the indomitable spirit and fierce determination that had allowed them to conquer the stars, and he had long suspected that the Elysians' contempt masked a deeper fear, a recognition of the threat that a united humanity could pose to their empire. That was why years ago, Thompson had begun secretly constructing the stealth fleet, pouring trillions of credits into the development of advanced cloaking technology and devastating weapons. He had handpicked the best and brightest from across the UESC to crew the ships, training them tirelessly in preparation for the day when they would be called upon to defend Earth. Now, as the Elysian fleet approached the solar system, that day had finally arrived. Thompson knew that the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders and on the skill and bravery of the men and women under his command. It was time to show the Elysians the true might of the human race, to make them pay for every insult and every act of aggression. The console beeped, snapping Thompson out of his reverie. "Admiral, Fleet Command has authorized the deployment of the stealth fleet," the AI reported. "You are cleared to engage the enemy." Thompson nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the holo display. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Prepare to decloak on my mark. Let's show these xeno-bastards what humans are made of." Thompson watched the holo display intently as the Elysian fleet entered the outer reaches of the Sol system. Their ships moved with a confident, almost lazy air, as if they had all the time in the world to conquer humanity. Thompson's lip curled in disgust. The Xenos had no idea what was coming. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Move into position and prepare to decloak on my mark." Acknowledgements flooded in from the stealth fleet's captains. Thompson could hear the eagerness in their voices, the hunger for long-awaited vengeance against the arrogant Elysians. The human ships glided silently through space, invisible to the enemy's sensors. They took up carefully planned positions around the Elysian fleet, forming a deadly web that would ensnare the Xenos from all sides. Thompson's eyes never left the holodisplay. He watched as the Elysians drew closer and closer to Earth, their formation showing no sign of caution or concern. They truly believed they were invincible. "All ships," Thompson said, his voice calm and steady. "Decloak now." In an instant, the human fleet shimmered into view, a vast armada of sleek, deadly vessels that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The Elysians reacted with shock and confusion, their formation faltering as they suddenly found themselves surrounded by human ships. On the bridge of his flagship, Emperor Varys stared at the viewscreen in disbelief. The human fleet was far larger and more advanced than any Elysian intelligence had suggested. The sight of it filled him with a rage born of wounded pride and shattered arrogance. "All ships open fire," Varys bellowed. "Destroy these human upstarts." But the Elysians were already too late. The human ships were ready, their weapons charged and their crews primed for battle. Thompson watched with grim satisfaction as his fleet began to pick off the Elysian ships one by one, their advanced shields easily absorbing the enemy's fire, while their own weapons cut through the Xenos hulls like a plasma torch through paper. The Elysians fought back desperately, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Their ships were slow and clumsy compared to the nimble human vessels, and their weapons seemed to bounce harmlessly off the humans' advanced shields. As the battle raged on, Thompson could see the realization dawning on the faces of the Elysian commanders. They had made a terrible mistake in underestimating humanity, in dismissing them as primitives and savages, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. The bridge of the Nemesis shook as an Elysian ship exploded nearby, the shockwave rattling the hull. But Thompson barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the holodisplay, watching as his fleet tore the Elysians apart with ruthless efficiency. He knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be many more battles to come before humanity was truly safe from Elysian aggression. But for now, he allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The Elysians had learned a hard lesson today, one that they would not soon forget. Humanity was not to be trifled with, and woe to any who dared to stand in their way. As the fierce space battle raged on, a panicked voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral Thompson, sensors detect a group of Elysian ships breaking away from their main fleet. They're on a direct course for Earth." Thompson zoomed the holodisplay in on the offending vessels. A dozen heavy cruisers, loaded with orbital bombardment weaponry, rocketing towards the blue marble of humanity's homeworld. His blood ran cold as he realized their intent. Those ships could unleash a rain of destruction on Earth's teeming cities, killing billions. He punched the fleet-wide comm. "This is Admiral Thompson. The Elysians are making a run on Earth, trying to bombard our major population centers from orbit. We can't let them reach firing range." Thompson needed his best pilot on this. "Captain Reese, I'm sending you the coordinates of those cruisers. Take your squadron and intercept them before they can threaten Earth." "Affirmative, Admiral," came the drawled reply. "We'll show those Xeno bastards what human pilots can do." Reese, callsign Maverick, was a living legend, known for his daring maneuvers and uncanny aim. If anyone could pull off this mission, it was him. From the bridge, Thompson watched the blinking lights of Maverick's stealth fighter squadron race after the Elysian cruisers. The enemy ships loomed on the display, growing larger as they streaked towards Earth. They had to close the distance before the Xenos entered weapons range. Suddenly, the space around the Elysian cruisers lit up with crisscrossing energy beams and missiles. Reese's fighters had reached the enemy. The humans were outnumbered 2-1, but Thompson knew they would fight like devils. The human ships danced nimbly around the lumbering Elysian cruisers, peppering them with precisely aimed shots, while neatly evading the answering fire. First one, then another cruiser broke apart, spewing debris and venting atmosphere. "Keep it up, Maverick," Thompson growled into the comm. "Don't let a single one of those monsters reach Earth." He watched Reese's fighters weave their deadly dance, outflying and outshooting the increasingly desperate Elysians. The Xenos began to panic, their tight formation disintegrating as they tried in vain to shake the human pilots. After several tense minutes, the last Elysian cruiser exploded into a plume of shrapnel and escaping gases. Maverick's fighters regrouped and rocketed back towards the main battle. "Cruiser threat neutralized, Admiral," Reese reported, his voice crackling with adrenaline and satisfaction. "Earth is safe, returning to the fight." Thompson let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Earth had been spared a devastating blow thanks to the bravery and skill of its defenders. But the battle was far from over. He turned his gaze back to the main Elysian fleet, still locked in desperate combat with his ships. There was still work to be done to secure humanity's future. The Elysian hammer emerged from the chaos of the battle, its immense form dwarfing the other ships. It bristled with an array of formidable cannons and missile batteries, their barrels glowing with deadly energy. The dreadnought opened fire, lancing beams of destruction through the human fleet. Ships crumpled and exploded under the onslaught, their hulls shattering like glass. On the bridge of the Nemesis, alarms blared and damage reports flooded in. Thompson gripped the edge of the holotable, his knuckles white. The hammer was tearing his fleet apart, its weapons carving a path of devastation through his ships. At this rate, the humans would be annihilated within minutes. He turned to the ship's intercom. "Dr. Navarro, report to the bridge immediately." A few moments later, the chief engineer hurried onto the bridge, his face lined with tension. "You called for me, Admiral." Thompson gestured to the holodisplay, where the Elysian hammer loomed large. "That dreadnought is ripping us to shreds, Doctor. We need a way to take it out, and fast. What have you got for me?" Navarro hesitated, then spoke. "There might be one option, sir. My team has been working on an experimental weapon, the Singularity Bomb. It's designed to create a miniature black hole upon detonation, with enough gravitational force to crush anything within its radius." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "A black hole bomb? Sounds dangerous." "It is," Navarro admitted. "We've never tested it in actual combat conditions. There's a risk that the Singularity could become unstable or expand beyond our ability to control it." Thompson watched as another human ship vanished in a fiery blast, consumed by the hammer's relentless fire. He clenched his jaw. "We're out of options, Doctor. If we don't take out that dreadnought, we're all dead anyway. Prepare the Singularity Bomb for deployment." Navarro nodded grimly. "Yes, sir, I'll need some time to ready the device and calculate the optimal detonation point." "Make it quick," Thompson said. "We don't have much time." As Navarro hurried off the bridge, Thompson turned back to the holodisplay. The Elysian hammer continued its devastating attack, its weapons pounding the human fleet mercilessly. The Admiral watched as his ships fought back valiantly, their own guns blazing in defiance. But it was a losing battle, and everyone on the bridge knew it. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness, as Navarro and his team worked frantically to prepare the Singularity Bomb. Thompson paced the bridge, his eyes never leaving the holodisplay. The human fleet was being pushed back, their formation crumbling under the relentless Elysian assault. Finally, Navarro's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, the Singularity Bomb is ready for deployment. We've identified a weak point in the hammer's shields near the main reactor. If we can detonate the bomb there, it should take out the entire ship." Thompson nodded. "Understood, Doctor. Send the targeting data to the weapons officer." He turned to the bridge crew. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Prepare for a coordinated attack on the Elysian dreadnought. We're going to hit it with everything we've got, and then detonate a Singularity Bomb at its weak point. This is our last chance to turn the tide of this battle. Let's make it count. Acknowledgements flooded in from the fleet's captains. The human ships began to regroup, forming up for one final, desperate assault on the Elysian hammer. Thompson watched the holodisplay intently, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. Either the singularity bomb would work, and the humans would emerge victorious, or it would fail, and the Elysian Empire would crush them once and for all. "All ships," Thompson said, his voice steady, "commence attack." The human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing as they charged towards the looming form of the Elysian dreadnought. The hammer responded with a storm of fire, its guns tearing into the advancing human ships. Explosions filled the void, as vessels on both sides were reduced to shattered wrecks. But the humans pressed on, drawing ever closer to their target. The Elysian shields flared and crackled under the onslaught, but held firm. Thompson watched the holodisplay, his eyes fixed on the pulsing red icon that marked the hammer's weak point. "Steady," he murmured, "almost there." The human ships were taking heavy losses, but they kept up their relentless barrage, and then, finally, a series of explosions blossomed along the hammer's hull as its shields failed. "Now," Thompson shouted, "detonate the bomb!" On the holodisplay, a blinding white light flared at the hammer's weak point. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly at first, but with gathering speed, the dreadnought began to crumple inward, as if being crushed by an immense, invisible fist. The singularity bomb had worked. On the bridge of the Elysian flagship, Emperor Varys slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair. His eyes blazed with barely contained rage as he watched the tactical display, which showed his fleet being steadily pushed back by the human ships. This was not how it was supposed to go. The humans were meant to be an easy conquest, a primitive species that would quickly bend the knee to Elysian might. Instead, they had unveiled a fleet of advanced warships that were tearing his own forces apart. "How did this happen?" Varys snarled, turning to face his assembled generals. "How did the humans develop such technology without us knowing? Have you all been asleep at your posts?" The generals shifted uncomfortably, none of them eager to draw the Emperor's wrath. Finally, one of them, a shrewd strategist named Zaran, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," Zaran said, bowing his head, "I believe the humans may have had help from an outside source. Their ships and weapons are too advanced to have been developed independently." Ferris's eyes narrowed. What outside source? Who would dare to interfere in our affairs? Zaran hesitated for a moment before replying, "I cannot say for certain, Your Majesty, but I will investigate further and find the truth." Varys nodded curtly. "See that you do, Zaran. I want answers, and I want them soon." As the Emperor turned back to the tactical display, Zaran hurried off the bridge and made his way to his private quarters. There, he pulled up the sensor data from the battle and began to analyze it carefully, looking for any clues that might shed light on the human's mysterious benefactor. As he pored over the data, something caught Zaran's eye. The energy signatures of some of the human ship's weapons were strangely familiar, almost as if he had seen them before. And then it hit him. "The Keepers," Zaran whispered, his eyes widening in shock. "The humans have Keeper technology." The Keepers were an ancient and enigmatic race, one that the Elysians had long feared and respected. They possessed technology that was far beyond anything the Elysians had ever seen, and they guarded their secrets jealously. If the humans had somehow gained access to Keeper technology, it would explain their sudden leap forward in capabilities. Zaran leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. This changed everything. If the humans had the backing of the Keepers, then the Elysians were in far greater danger than they had realized. He needed to warn the Emperor immediately. But, as Zaran rose to his feet, a sudden thought struck him. If the humans had Keeper technology, then perhaps the Elysians could acquire it as well. If they could capture one of the human ships and study its secrets, they might be able to turn the tide of the war in their favor. A slow smile spread across Zaran's face as he began to formulate a plan. The humans may have caught the Elysians off guard this time, but they would not be so lucky again. With the power of the Keepers at their fingertips, the Elysian Empire would be unstoppable. Thompson's eyes were locked on the holo display as Navarro's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, the Singularity Bomb is primed and ready, awaiting your order for deployment." Thompson nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Reese, you're up. Escort that bomb to the hammer and blow that monstrosity to hell." "With pleasure, Admiral," Reese replied, his voice steady despite the chaos of the battle raging around him. Thompson watched as Reese's squadron formed up around the bomb, their sleek fighters moving into a tight defensive formation. They rocketed towards the Elysian dreadnought, weaving through the maelstrom of enemy fire. As they closed in on the hammer, the dreadnought's point defense systems opened up, filling the void with a storm of laser fire and missiles. Reese's squadron scattered, duking and dodging in a desperate attempt to evade the onslaught. "Stay sharp, people," Reese barked over the comm. "We've got to get this payload delivered no matter the cost." But the cost was high. One by one, Reese's wingmen fell, their ships blossoming into fireballs as the hammer's relentless fire found its mark. Thompson gripped the edge of the holo table, his knuckles white as he watched the casualties mount. And then, miraculously, Reese broke through. With a shout of triumph, he launched the Singularity Bomb towards the hammer, its sleek black casing glinting in the light of the stars. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a blinding flash, the bomb detonated. A swirling vortex of darkness appeared at the heart of the Elysian dreadnought, a howling maelstrom of gravitational forces that tore at the fabric of space itself. The hammer shuddered and buckled, its hull plates crumpling like tinfoil as the Singularity consumed it from within. Elysian crew members screamed in terror, their voices abruptly cut off as they were sucked into the swirling black hole. In a matter of seconds, the mighty Elysian dreadnought was gone, vanished into the hungry maw of the Singularity. A cheer went up from the human fleet as they watched their hated enemy disappear forever. But Thompson had no time to celebrate. With the hammer destroyed, the Elysian fleet was in disarray, their formation broken, and their morale shattered. It was the perfect opportunity to press the attack. "All ships advance," Thompson ordered, his voice ringing with authority. "Let's finish this." The human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing as they tore into the faltering Elysian ranks. The once proud Elysian ships scattered before the human onslaught, their crews fleeing in panic as the UESC forces cut through them like a scythe through wheat. Zaran strode onto the bridge of the Elysian flagship, a datapad clutched tightly in his hand. Emperor Varys turned from the tactical display to face him, his eyes narrowing. "You have something to report, Zaran?" Varys asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Zaran nodded, holding out the datapad. "I do, Your Majesty, and I fear you will not like what I have to say." Varys snatched the datapad from Zaran's hand and scanned its contents. His eyes widened as he read, his face growing pale with shock and disbelief. "The Keepers," he whispered. "The humans have been receiving aid from the Keepers." "Yes, Your Majesty," Zaran confirmed. "The energy signatures of their weapons and shields match those of known Keeper technology, and their tactics suggest they have been receiving intelligence on our movements and plans." Varys crushed the datapad in his fist, his eyes blazing with fury. "I have gravely underestimated our foes," he growled, "both the humans and the Keepers. If the Keepers have truly taken the human side, then we are facing a far greater threat than I ever imagined." He turned to Zaran, his expression grim. "Send a message to the homeworld. Inform them of the Keeper's involvement and request immediate reinforcements. We will need every ship and soldier we can muster if we are to prevail against such a formidable enemy." Zaran bowed his head. "As you command, Your Majesty." As Zaran hurried to carry out his orders, Varys turned back to the tactical display, his mind racing. The humans, with their advanced technology and the backing of the Keepers, posed a dire threat to the Elysian Empire. He would need to devise a new strategy, one that would allow him to defeat both the humans and their ancient allies. But he would have to be careful. The Keepers were not a race to be trifled with. They possessed technology and knowledge that dwarfed even the most advanced Elysian science. To cross them openly would be to invite destruction upon the Empire. No, Varys would have to be cunning. He would have to find a way to turn the Keeper's own technology against them, to use their secrets to his advantage. It would be a dangerous game, but one he was determined to win. For the glory of the Elysian Empire, he would find a way to crush the humans and their Keeper allies, no matter the cost. The battle raged on, the void of space alight with the flashes of weapons fire and the blooming fireballs of destroyed ships. On the bridge of the UESC Nemesis, Thompson watched the tactical display with a grim expression. The Elysian fleet was in disarray, their formation shattered, and their ships fleeing before the human onslaught. But the fighting was far from over. Suddenly the view screen flickered and a new image appeared. Thompson leaned forward, his eyes widening in surprise. The figure on the screen was tall and slender, with an ethereal beauty that seemed to transcend the physical realm. It was a Keeper, one of the ancient and enigmatic beings that the Elysians so feared. "Admiral Thompson," the Keeper said, its voice resonating with power and wisdom. "I am Zorian, emissary of the Keepers. I come bearing a message of great importance." Thompson nodded slowly, his mind racing with questions. "I'm listening." Zorian's expression was solemn. "For centuries, we have watched your species from afar, marveling at your resilience and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. You have faced challenges that would have broken lesser races, and yet you have endured." The Keeper paused, its eyes seeming to pierce into Thompson's very soul. "We believe that humanity has the potential to be a great force for good in the galaxy, a bulwark against the darkness that threatens to consume us all. That is why we have chosen to intervene in this battle, to ensure your survival." Thompson felt a rush of emotion at Zorian's words. To know that the Keepers, the most advanced and powerful race in the known universe, had been watching humanity's progress and had deemed them worthy of aid was humbling beyond measure. "You honor us with your support," Thompson said, bowing his head in respect. "We will not forget the debt we owe you." Zorian nodded, but its expression remained grave. "But know this, Admiral. The Elysians are but one of many threats that you will face in the coming years. There are dark forces at work in the galaxy, ancient evils that seek to consume all in their path. You must be prepared to face them, to fight for the survival of your species and all those who stand with you." Thompson felt a chill run down his spine at Zorian's words. He had always known that the universe was a dangerous place, but to hear it spoken so plainly by a being as ancient and wise as a Keeper was sobering. "We will be ready," Thompson said, his voice filled with determination. "Humanity will stand against any threat, no matter how great. We will fight for our future, and for the future of all those who stand with us." Zorian smiled then, a sight of such beauty and grace that it took Thompson's breath away. "I believe you, Admiral. The Keepers will be watching, and we will aid you when we can. But the fate of your species and of the galaxy ultimately rests in your hands. Remember that, and fight with all the strength and courage that humanity possesses." With those final words, the Keeper's image faded from the view screen, leaving Thompson alone with his thoughts. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The war against the Elysians was far from over, and there would be many more battles to come. But with the support of the Keepers and the indomitable will of humanity, Thompson knew that they would prevail. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, no matter what sacrifices had to be made, humanity would fight on and they would emerge victorious. Thompson turned back to the tactical display, his eyes blazing with renewed determination. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would never give up, never surrender. They would fight to the bitter end, and they would win. For the sake of their species and for the sake of the galaxy, they had to. The tide of battle turned in humanity's favor, with the destruction of the Elysian hammer and the support of the enigmatic Keepers. Thompson watched as the Elysian ships, once so confident in their superiority, began to falter and break formation under the relentless onslaught of the human fleet's advanced weapons. "They're retreating, Admiral," Reese reported over the comm. his voice filled with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "The Elysians are pulling back towards their own space." Thompson nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical display. The Elysians were on the run, but he knew that the war was far from over. He had to press the advantage, to strike a decisive blow against the Elysian Empire and end their threat to Earth once and for all. "Pursue them," Thompson ordered, his voice steady and resolute. "We can't let them regroup and come back stronger. It's time to finish this." As the human fleet chased after the retreating Elysians, Emperor Varys paced the bridge of his flagship, his face twisted with rage and desperation. He had underestimated the humans, had failed to see the threat they posed until it was too late. Now, with his fleet in shambles and his empire on the brink of collapse, he knew that he had only one option left. "Ram them," Varys snarled, his eyes blazing with a mad light. "Take as many of those human ships down with us as you can. If we cannot have victory, then we will have vengeance." The Elysian ships turned, their engines flaring as they charged towards the human fleet. Thompson saw the move on his tactical display and felt a cold dread settle in the pit of his stomach. He knew what Varys was planning, knew the terrible choice that lay before him. He could order his ships to evade, to let the Elysians pass through and hope that they could be destroyed before they caused too much damage. But that would mean risking everything, putting the fate of Earth and all of humanity in the hands of chance. Or he could give the order to fire, to unleash the full might of the human fleet's weapons on the charging Elysians. It would mean the death of countless Elysian soldiers, but it would also mean the destruction of many of his own people, caught in the crossfire of the battle. For a long moment Thompson hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a physical burden. Then, with a heavy heart, he gave the order. "Fire!" The human ships opened up with everything they had, missiles and laser beams tearing through the void of space towards the oncoming Elysians. The Elysian ships shuddered and broke apart under the onslaught, their hulls crumpling like paper as the human weapons found their mark. But the Elysians did not go down easily. Even as their ships were destroyed around them, they continued to charge forward, their weapons firing until the very end. Human ships exploded and burned, the screams of the dying filling the comm channels as the battle reached its crescendo. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The last of the Elysian ships was gone, reduced to nothing more than drifting debris and fading embers. The human fleet had won, but the cost had been high. Thompson slumped back in his chair, his face lined with grief and exhaustion. He had done what he had to do, had made the hard choices that war demanded, but that did not make the weight of those choices any easier to bear. He looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of the universe that lay beyond the confines of the Sol system. The Keepers had shown him that humanity was not alone, that there were other races and civilizations out there, waiting to be discovered. But they had also shown him the dangers that lurked in the depths of space, the ancient evils and hidden threats that could destroy everything humanity had built. The war with the Elysians had been a terrible ordeal, a crucible that had tested the very limits of human endurance and resolve. And Thompson knew that it was only the beginning. There would be other challenges to come, other enemies to face. The universe was a vast and unpredictable place, and humanity would need to be ready for whatever lay ahead. But for now, at least, Earth was safe. The Elysian threat had been eliminated and humanity could begin to rebuild and heal. The scars of the war would linger for generations, but Thompson knew that they would also serve as a reminder of the strength and resilience of the human spirit. He took a deep breath, then turned to his crew. There was still much work to be done, still many battles to be fought, but for now they could take a moment to savor their hard-won victory and to honor the sacrifices of those who had given their lives to secure it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.